Hey guys, welcome back. Today is a good day because we are finally ready to spray the underside of this 1971 Camaro with Raptor Liner to finally call the underside good, which means we'll be able to flip the car back over soon and start putting things back together. Today's goal is to get the underside of this 1971 Camaro sprayed with Raptor Liner because winter is approaching and I do not have heat out here. So I want to make sure that's done so I can go ahead and work on smaller items and start putting this car back together over the winter here. So there's a couple things we got to do today. First thing is I've already scuffed the entire underside of the car with a red scuff pad, and then I've wiped it down a few times with wax and grease remover already. Before we start spraying the Raptor Liner, I do need to seam seal a few areas under the car. I'll go ahead and show you guys what areas I'm going to seam seal. There's not going to be many of them. It seems like there's two schools of thought for seam sealing. Some say seam seal everything underneath where panels overlap, where you've made welds, all that kind of stuff. And then others say don't really seam seal too much underneath the car, seam seal a lot of it inside the car. This way, if moisture does get in the seams, it has a way to escape. So I'm kind of in the, I guess, latter camp there. So I'm gonna really focus on seam sealing the inside of the car up. So there's not gonna be a lot to do on the underside of the car, but I'm gonna show you what I am going to seam seal. Let us know how far you take seam sealing underneath the car in the comments below. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys where I'm gonna seam seal. All right guys, so the areas that I'm going to seam seal here are going to be where the floor pans overlap and then the wheel wells in the back. I'll show you in a minute. So up here we have the front floor pans overlapping the firewall, toe boards here, and we're going to go ahead and seam seal all that. Moving down, I'm almost positive these were seam sealed, but don't quote me on that. So this is where I'd say I don't know if that's a whole one piece there, that trunk, but the trunk comes up and meets with the rear of the floors here. So we're going to go ahead and seam seal these areas on both sides of the frame rail, and same over here. We're going to seam seal the wheel wells. So we're going to tape this off and seam seal all the way down, and then we'll come this way and go here. So we'll do that on both of the wheel wells. So here we are at the back of the car, and I'm going to seam seal these areas where all of these panels overlap back here. And I'm only going to bring that down to about here. That way, if any moisture is blowing up in there, it's not going to get up in there. And if anything does get in, it'll still be able to get out down here because I'm not going to seam seal across here. So we'll do that on both sides as well. All right, so those are the only areas that I will be seam sealing underneath the car. One mistake I made while stripping the car down is I did not take a note of where all of the factory seam sealer is. Normally what I'd say is just put seam sealer back where the factory had it. Don't go overboard, don't go too crazy. But I didn't write it down, so I don't remember. So those are the areas that I'm gonna seam seal on the underside of the car. And then when we get to the inside of the car some other time, I'll really hit that good with self-leveling seam sealer. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape off the areas where the floor pans overlap. The area in the back of the car, I'm not gonna tape. I'm just gonna go ahead and do my best to get it in there and cover everything up. And for me, I'm just gonna use my finger to smooth it out and a paper towel to keep things clean. So let's go ahead and tape up the seams. All right guys, so I got everything taped off. Here's the front floor pan where it meets up with the toe boards. So we're good to go there. Moving back, here we have the rear floor pans meeting up with the trunk area. So I got those areas taped off. I got both wheel wells taped off just like this. I also applied some tape to the areas in the rear trunk here. So just to kind of keep it somewhat contained, but not too worried about it. Here's a look at the driver's side. All right guys, so that's all we're gonna seam seal on the underside. Like I said, everything else will be on the inside of the car. So I'm not gonna do any of these areas here or anything like that. This way, if moisture does get in there, it can get out. And as I mentioned, whenever I do the inside, I'll be using a 2K self-leveling seam sealer, so it would kind of go down into any of these larger gaps or anything like that and seal it up pretty good. So here's the seam sealer that I'm going to use for this. This is a 3M heavy bodied seam sealer. I chose this because the car's on its side and I don't want the seam sealer running down the side of the car. So going ahead and give this a shot, and the number here is 08308. So I got all this stuff on Amazon. I'll throw links in the description. This is the applicator gun for this. I got this on Amazon as well. It's not a 3M brand or anything. It's a lot cheaper than that. But basically, it comes with different plastic ends that you put on here to get different diameter circles there. And the reason you need that is, like, you can take a look here. This is the seam sealer. They're both the same. Over here, what do I have? I have some panel bonding adhesive, and you can see one's bigger than the other. So you need to fit the right fitting into the product that you're using. Otherwise, you'll end up pushing it sideways or the wrong way or something else, and it'll end up coming out the back. Ask me how I know. Here's just an example of the different fittings that come with this gun. So they just kind of pop on. You can kind of see here. So these screw off, and you can put the other ones on, and they stack up. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this into the gun and get it mixed, and then we'll start applying it to the car. All right, guys, so I got the seam sealer in the gun. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the cap off, and I'm going to put some pressure on this until both products are mixing equally. And then what we'll do is we'll put on a nozzle and go from there. And guys, one thing to note with this is that it says do not apply it over any kind of self-etching primer. So you'll want to throw down a nice epoxy primer and then put your seam sealer over that. So you can see right there, both products are starting to come out. That's what we're looking for. So go ahead and get rid of that. And we will put our nozzle on. Just slides over. This goes on like that. And then what we do is we go ahead and send this up through the nozzle. And what you should see are both parts mixing. So you can see the clear stuff here, and then the black stuff over here. And this only has a 6-minute working time, so I got to be quick about this. As far as once it's on the car. Okay. So I'm just going to throw a little more out here just to make sure we're mixing good. And it's time to go over the car. When it's squirting out like that, just back the pressure off the gun. There's this metal lever back here. Just hit that. That'll take the pressure off. You won't waste it. All right, let's go over to the car. All right, guys, so we got that on, and I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off. Again, there's only 6 minutes of working time here, so I got to do a section at a time. I'm going to go ahead and put some seam sealer around these here as well. I'm pretty sure these had seam sealer around them whenever I stripped this down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. All right, so we're done with the seam sealer. This is 6.75 ounces, and it did those areas. So I ran out right as I was doing these seatbelt mounts here. So I got them, and that was it. So just an idea, if you're buying that stuff, if you're doing a lot, if you're doing both inside, outside, you might need 2 of them, maybe 3 of them. And one thing I'll say is that a pneumatic gun for applying this stuff would be amazing. It's pretty hard to pump out of there. So anyway, it's on. So let's take a look here. So this is the seam sealer. Pretty exciting, huh? And up here's the front. So we're good here. Like I said, I think that there was sealer around these seatbelt mounts. I vaguely remember taking the wire wheel and grinding that stuff out of there, so I put that back. I probably should have put some seam sealer where I welded in these subframe connectors, but I think the Raptor Liner will do a good job of sealing that stuff up as well, so I'm not too worried about it. And that's it. Let me get a light and show you what the back area looks like here. All right, so you can kind of see back there what I did, where all of these panels come together. I just sealed that up really good and just straight down. So if any water does happen to get in there, it can still seep out in these areas here. So that's all good. So it's time to move on to the Raptor Liner. Before we do that though, I'm going to let the seam sealer cure for an hour, and then we should be good to paint on top of it. The instructions, I think, said you can paint on top of it within 15 minutes, so an hour should be plenty of time. And within that hour, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and plug up any bolt holes or flat surfaces that I don't want to get the Raptor Liner on that might cause interference with parts being installed and all that kind of stuff. So that's all I'm going to do now. I'm not going to film that. I'll check back once that's done. I'll show you kind of everything I taped up, and then we'll get ready to spray some Raptor Liner. All right, guys, here's a look at the car all taped up. So we got all of the bolt holes filled with tape. All I did was just roll the tape and push it in there. I have these taped off here because I'm going to weld my subframe to this, so I don't really need any extra work there, sanding that stuff to make a good weld. And we got any holes in the body taped up as well. So we are ready to go. And you just saw me wipe the whole thing down again with wax and grease remover. It's probably the 4th time I've wiped this down. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I already hit the whole thing with a red scuff pad just because the epoxy's been on here for longer than 5 or 7 days. So we're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and go over and take a look at the Raptor Liner and get that ready. All right, guys, so here is the Raptor Liner kit that I got. It's black, nothing special about it. I got this gun that came with it. I already put it together, and my regulator's on there. I'm going to be spraying at about 50 PSI. This is my first time ever spraying this stuff, so I'm going to hit a test panel first. It seems pretty easy to mix up and everything. You essentially just take this here, and you take some of this and you fill this bottle up to this line here, and then you shake for about 2 minutes, and then you attach your gun to the bottle and spray. So I'm going to go ahead and mix one up here, hit a test panel with it, and see what kind of what the texture looks like, all that good stuff, and then we'll see if we're ready to spray. All right, guys, it's the next day. Let me show you how it turned out. All right, guys, here it is. It turned out really nice, in my opinion. I like the texture. I think it's perfect. This stuff sprayed on really easy. Anyone can do it. And I hope it lasts a very long time. So, very happy with it. Here's an up-close look at the texture. It was about 50 degrees when I sprayed this stuff. Didn't seem to impact it too much. It's nice and dry today. The instructions say it takes about 5 to 7 days to fully cure. If you were to actually use it as a bed liner before you threw heavy items in the bed, you'd want to let this stuff sit for 5 to 7 days. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to let the car sit like this for a while, and we're going to move our attention over to the subframe and the rear end because I want to get this thing back on all 4 wheels. I can't wait till it's sitting on its wheels again, and I no longer have to come under here for any kind of metal work or anything like that. I don't mind putting brake lines and stuff on, but the other stuff, man, it's a job. So here you have it, guys. Looks really good. I'm happy I went with it. I was torn. I was going to go with like a satin black or something like that, but I think this will do a lot better in the long run. And I wouldn't expect any rust coming through here with the amount of prep and everything that I put into this, so hoping for the best there. Just look at the wheel well up here. You can see how it sprayed over the seam sealer there. Turned out pretty nice. You can hardly tell the seam sealer's there. And I did have some areas in here. I thought about putting some filler in here. This is just where I cut out the seatbelt hump in here to give me a little more tire clearance. And it wasn't perfect in here, but this bed liner actually kind of takes your eye away from that and you can hardly tell it's there. So I'm happy with that. It's not 100% perfect in these areas on both sides, but I don't think it'll draw attention once the wheels and everything are on there. So looks pretty good. I pulled all the tape and everything out. You can see the tape held up real nice. There's no bed liner in the areas where the bolts go. So we're going to start moving our attention to this guy here. We got to get everything off the subframe. We got to get the subframe stripped down. Got to get the control arms off, all that stuff. And we're going to rebuild everything, paint it, make it look good. And for the rear end, I don't think I'm going to really rebuild too much. I'll replace the seals because it looks like they're leaking over there. But we'll strip that down and get it all painted up and cleaned up really nice as well. So guys, that's it for this one. If you have any questions that I can answer for you as far as spraying this stuff goes or anything else, put them down below. If you got any tips or anything to share for the next time I do this or someone else does it, put those down below as well. And if you like the video and if you want to see the subframe and the rear end cleaned up and restored and put back into the car, consider subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.